All right, everyone. Well, thank you for attending. Today's session is going to be how to secure that first job with a professional panel on HPE interview process. Of course, this is another one of our New York State AHPERD virtual Ken Demas Leadership Academy professional development series. Today's the 21st of April, and our session will be ending at 8:30. Before I introduce our speakers, some quick links here. If you become a New York State AHPERD member, some benefits include the professional development, which you of course are attending now, on top of many other things. Also, there's an insurance that's involved where you get $1 million liability. God forbid something happens when you become a professional teacher during student teaching or while you're doing field work. Of course, advocacy, where we do a lot of speak out day stuff as well. And we also have grants on top of that, where you can one day apply for grants for your school to help fund money and buy equipment. We also have many awards involved too, with JB Nash, on top of many other scholarships, of course. CTLEs, once you get into the field, you'll need to do those. And then leadership, of course, my position and Jared's position, the Future Professionals President and President-elect. And we also have some of our delegates here tonight, which is a new position as well that we just tacked on. Also, we have our membership rates here. Undergrad students already have it pulled up. It's $41.50, completely worth it with all the benefits you get out of it.
Yeah.
And after that little plug, I'm now going to let our presenters, Lori, Don, and Bob, in order, introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Hewlett. Can you hear me, Anthony?
Yep,
Thumbs
you're
up.
good.
All right. I am a retired health educator from the Sachem School District on Long Island. When in my stint there at Sachem for 30 years, I was the department chairperson for health education, a position you don't see a lot in a lot of school districts. And part of that responsibility was the hiring, facilitating of student teaching positions, cooperating teaching positions, as well as new hires. I'm currently retired. I'm serving as the Suffolk Zone president. I'm also an adjunct professor for SUNY Cortland student teachers in health education.
Don, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. You guys can hear me? I'm good?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm Donn Tobin. I'm in my 25th year of teaching elementary physical education at Lakeview Elementary School in the Mahopac Central School District, which is located in Putnam County. I am a SUNY Cortland graduate, class of '97. I have my master's degree from Mercy College in school administration supervision. I was an adjunct professor at Manhattanville College for 13 years. And I'm currently serving New York State AHPERD on the board of directors, but I'll be rotating off, and I'm the current president-elect of the Southeastern Zone. And I'm very honored and lucky to say that I was named the 2017 New York State AHPERD Elementary Physical Education Teacher of the Year, the 2019 Shape America Eastern District Teacher of the Year, and the 2019 Shape America National Elementary Physical Education Teacher of the Year. And I have been on, not only interviewed for myself, but I've been on several interview committees for other candidates, both administration as well as teaching.
Thank you, Don. Bob?
Good evening, all. Sound good?
Yep.
Good. Very good. Thank you. My name is Robert Zifchock, but friends and colleagues call me Bob. I've served districts in a variety of roles, everything from an educator through an administrator. My administrative experience is varied. It's varied from an elementary assistant principal, high school assistant principal, district director for health, physical education, recreation, district director of health, physical education and Title IX compliance, district director of health, physical education and wellness. It's a mouthful. I've had much experience in the hiring and the whole process. So today we're going to help you a little bit, and hopefully if you have any questions at the end, anytime I'm going, stop, talk to the moderator, whatever. Nice to see Don had won so many awards, and Lori, nice to see you retired too, Lori. That's a good thing. I think lastly, that I want to add is that I look forward to helping all of you get a job. That's what we're here for.
Thank you, Bob. Before we get into the presentation, I just want to remind everyone this session will be recorded. And if you do want the video at a later date, it will be shared. Also, I will put the link at the end for this presentation so you can save all the information. Take it away, Donn.
Okay, hi. So before I start, just to premise this, a lot of you may hear some overlap between Lori, Bob, and myself. So, and that's quite all right if that should happen. I'm also going to try to keep mine a little bit brief, so that way we can fit everyone in. So if you're ready to start and you're looking for a job, the first advice I would have for all of you is, where would you want to work? And that might include you having to relocate to a different part of the state. It could also be within a commuting distance, anywhere. I know people that commute over an hour to get to their job. For example, if you live in the Rochester area, would you be willing to apply for a position in the Albany area? If you're at Albany, would you go down to the island in Long Island? And so once you've kind of given an idea of what you think you might want to do and where you might want to go, if you are not already familiar with this, New York State BOCES, there is a site called OLAS, O-L-A-S. And on your screen, you can see that's the link to it. It's olasjobs.org. This is where a lot of districts across New York State will expect you to apply for a position. So they will post a position up. You have an opportunity to upload or download your cover letter, your resume. I believe you can include references there. It is a really quick and easy way to see what's being offered. And that not only includes physical education jobs, health education jobs, it includes administrative positions, it includes coaching positions, substitute teachers, teaching assistant positions. So again, if you're not familiar with it, it's really important, in my opinion, that you at least play around with it a bit and take a look at that. And it includes all areas of New York State. Kind of moving on, I also feel, in my opinion, that if you know there might be a position available, even though they want you to apply via OLAS, I don't think it couldn't hurt for you to send a second copy directly to head of HR and directly to the athletic director or whoever the key person is. It's just kind of covering your own bases. You're doing what they're expecting you to do, but you're also couldn't hurt just getting it in nonetheless. Before you even go, if let's say you get a little nibble and you think that you have an interview somewhere, it's a really smart idea to research the district. And I know that this is going to be talked about later in the presentation, but looking and searching what the demographics of the community is, the demographics of the district and or specific school that you might have knowledge for, it's a great idea to get an idea what the culture of that is. Now, a lot of times you can find that out via Google. So you just type in the name of a district, you can see what schools are available, who the administration is, who their teaching staff is. If you are not on Twitter, you are doing a detriment to yourself. It's 24 hours of professional development. You can get a really good idea just by searching the district through their Twitter feed to see what sort of posts they do. And it's not specific to our subject area, guys. It's literally for anything. Classroom teachers post stuff, administration post stuff, just to get a quick taste on it. And then the first part I'm going to talk to you about really has to do with your flexibility. So you know that you want to get an interview somewhere, but you really have your heart set on, let's say, a high school level position. But there's a district that you're interested in that has an elementary position. You really got to be flexible. Be realistic. A job is a job. So if you get your foot in the door and then later on you're able to transfer to a different level, then that's the way to go. I think if you're going to be limiting yourself, if you can get an interview somewhere only for that specific level. So just be a bit flexible when you're doing that part. I will move on a little bit later into the questioning part, but it's a good way for us to start in this presentation.
Thank you, Donn. Lori, go
guys.
ahead.
So I'm going to take a little, Donn, that was very good. You gave me some ideas I'm going to spin off of in a moment. Substitute teaching is an extremely important role you can play within a school. You can consider it a 24/7 job interview. While your school districts are desperate for substitutes, they'll even take you before you're certified, and you'll get paid. While you're substitute teaching, my advice to you would be never eat a lunch. Every lunch period, every period you have off, make connections with people within the school, sit in, observe other teachers, take notes, see what you like, see what you don't like about their teaching methodology. Observe all classes because you want your name out there. Volunteer, 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 volunteer coaching, volunteer club advising, volunteer doing lunch duty. Just be one of those go-getters. Don't be sitting in the faculty room, complaining and buying into all that drama that can sometimes occur in the faculty room. Don't ask, well, when do I eat lunch? When do I get off? Don't eat lunch. I know it sounds cruel, but all this will come back and help you. Have a strong, unique resume and cover letter, reflective of the position you are interviewing for. I cannot tell you how many times I would get hard copies of resumes, which were duplicates of what was on OLAS. So that was really good advice that Donn had given you about forwarding a hard copy of your resume. And I would read this beautiful resume that was all about lacrosse coaching. Here I am, the sitting chairperson of health education, and I'm reading all about this potential candidate's passion for lacrosse. While I understand coaching may be a passion of yours, if you're applying for a health education position, your resume should be reflective of health education. What have you done in volunteering within the field of health education? What is your passion within the field of health education? I don't want to know about your lacrosse coaching and your lacrosse camps at this point. That'll come out in the interview as something else you could add to our school district. Anything else? Can I just piggyback on a couple of things that Donn said?
Yeah, of course.
So Donn had mentioned a job is a job. Be flexible about your level. And I think he meant about elementary, middle school, and high school. Where I take a little bit of objection to that is a job isn't a job when it comes to health and physical education. What I mean is this: don't do the disservice to your students or your school district by accepting a position in health education if that's not your passion to get your foot in the door to be a physical educator. I think it's very disrespectful to the health education profession and professionals if you use health education as a foot in the door for physical education. So while a job is a job, and you need to be flexibility about whether you'll be elementary, middle school, or high school, I don't believe you should use health education as a doorway to physical education. Can you tell I'm like the down and dirty of the three people of the triad?
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, Lori.
You're beautiful, Lori. Love you. Let me start before I get into all this and pick up what Donn had talked about OLAS and give you a little bit about my history in using OLAS and going through as a director. What I would do wherever the job was, say it was a job at an elementary school, or say it was a job with a health educator at a middle school, wherever that position was, I would go to the principal and I would ask, what do you want to see in your candidate? And we would develop a profile to help me go through all the resumes that were on OLAS. And also, I want to warn you, and as it says here, use correct grammar, some of that other stuff, that I worked with some principals that would actually grade the resumes. They would go through and they would look at every resume for mistakes and whatever. And what do you think the ones with the most mistakes ended up being in that circular file? So understand, go over it many times, but I can also let you know that I've had as many as 600 applicants for a job. So, and as Lori and Don had said, it's important to make the thing tailored to what you see in the directions. The directions might say, I'm looking for a middle school physical education teacher who also can teach health 2 periods a day. Whatever the directions say, you want to tailor that letter in OLAS to that district, because you can do that. You can put as many, you can do it as many times as you like. But it's important to read and follow directions. The other thing too is where it says cell message and e-address, you should also put your social media there. You want to be cognizant of how you represent yourself in your cell message. For example, we had one candidate we were going to call for an interview, and the message was, yo, 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 you know what to do, leave the phone, leave the number. I mean, what does that tell you was going to happen to that candidate after that happened? So be cognizant of your cell message, be cognizant of your e-address. Studley 666, I mean, really? I mean, I've seen that one too. Now, these are real things. I'm not making this up. So be cognizant of your pages, or your Facebook pages, and all those pages. It's important, and when you're doing your cover letter and your resume, that you use verbs, and you don't need to use them in a correct sentence, and you don't need to close the sentence with a period. For example, and I'll just read you one sentence of my resume, which is only 3 pages long, by the way. In 38 years of service, it's only 3. But for example, collaborated with human resource and principals for candidate profile development, screening, interviewing, recommending candidates for hire, as well as for disciplinary or termination action. That's just one thing under professional service. So you want to use verbs, and we can talk about verbs that are important, and you can you can tailor that verb to you. We're all different, and it's important. We'll say for example, that you envisioned or you brought a program to life wherever you were. So the verb might start with administrate, chartered, created, designed, established, formed, implemented, initiated, instituted. Those are all quality verbs to start on with your resume. Make sure you spell check, make sure the grammar is up to par. Focus on your accomplishments, not your tasks. And by tasks, you don't want to focus on, I graded 16 papers. What is your accomplishment? I initiated a new program, or how you will bring about change. And make sure your resume goes to multiple people. You want to get multiple opinions on that resume. We're all available. We can help you with those opinions as well. Your college professors, an English teacher, somebody else out there gets second and third and fourth opinions on that. Thank you. Next.
I have to go back first before I continue. And Lori, thank you so much for your point. And yes, I was talking about the level of a job, not going from health education, physical education. So I was taking it from a stance of, if I was being hired as a physical education teacher and the job was for high school, but I wanted elementary, getting your foot in the door. But I do 100% agree with you. And what Bob just said was incredibly important, has to do with your online presence. I have known candidates who have lost positions because on, say, their Instagram profile, on their Instagram page or whatever, they posted something with lots and lots of curse words in there because, they figured that maybe their friends would see it, but they're public, and now anybody can see it, and an administrator might look you up and check you out. So that's an excellent point. So now the interview. So what do? You're granted an interview. When do you show up? How far in advance? How do you dress? You have to treat it as a business interview. You cannot go in PE attire, which can be polo shirt, some sort of slacks. That's too lax in my opinion. In my opinion, for men, you need a full suit. You need business attire for women. It is a business interview, and you're really talking about your future livelihood. In regards to showing up, and I think, Laura, you may be mentioning this further on, but let's say I have an interview at noon I would be at that place by half an hour or so early. In fact, I remember when I was going for interviews, and even though it was 25 years ago, I know almost everything I went through back then. I remember showing up in the parking lot an hour early, and I was studying index cards with notes, preparing for this interview. I'm also a bit anal and a bit neurotic. So, there you go. That's a little bit about my own opinion. But you got to show up early. You got to be dressed appropriately. Qualities that you want to show. And I have up on the screen, you can see body language and confidence. And I do have that little GIF going about their handshake. You want to come across as confident, but not being cocky. There really is a difference. You can believe in yourself, believe in your skills. You want to show all the highlights that you have and all the good things that you have to say, but you don't want to come across as if you can do their job for them who are interviewing you right then and there. You're there for your job, that specific job. You want to be confident about it. So body language, making eye contact with the person, making sure that you smile a lot is very, very important, that you smile, shaking somebody's hand firmly, and then just taking a deep breath and relaxing a little bit. I know for a lot of people that tend to be on the shy end, if you're a bit of an introvert, that can be really difficult for you. Especially if you go to an interview and it's not just a one-on-one interview, you can have a committee of people. There was an interview that I was part of for a teaching position. I was one of 5 people for the initial interview. Now, case in point, they did take a lot of the resumes and they narrowed down. So this was the initial step for that position, but they had already hammered out and released a whole bunch of resumes that they weren't even going to do. So this, you're talking about maybe the top 20 at this point. And it was not a one-on-one interview. It was a 5-on-1 interview. So you have to be confident, but you got to relax because you don't want to ruin for yourself right off the bat. Maybe you feel more comfortable in a large group setting because you want to prove something. You have something you want to say and show. That's quite all right. The last bullet I want to mention, which I do talk about again later on, has to do with being prepared. So I have no problems with somebody if you had, say, little note cards. And I remember in one of the interviews that I had to sit on, the person sat with it on their lap and they looked down. They didn't read off of them, but every once in a while they made eye contact. They referred to what they had to say. Fine. But asking questions, answering questions, these are going to be things that I'm going to touch on a little bit. Be prepared. One of the things that drives me nuts is that if I'm interviewing a candidate and they really don't look like they're ready for it, they're kind of winging it. In a lot of ways, I find that to be a huge turnoff because, yeah, that person has made past the first part of the whole interviewing process, but I want to know that they really want to be there. They want to be in my school. They want to be in my district. They want to be a valuable part of our school community. Just be prepared before you enter and do the thing. So I will go a little bit later into what sort of questions they might ask you and what sort of questions you might want to ask them.
Hi, everyone. So preparation before the interview, you need to really study the school district's websites, the demographics, the current courses that are being offered, and current extracurriculars. You have to be really careful if you're answering questions and you're referring to, hey, I'd really like to start a class on exercise physiology. Well, we already offer a course on exercise physiology. That demonstrates to me that you didn't take the time to look at the school district's websites and the courses offered and the philosophy offered within the heading of health or physical education. Always be a half hour early to your interview. You may have some paperwork to fill out. A previous candidate may not have shown up and they will take you early, and that'll look very favorably toward you that you had shown up early. And that, hey, we'll have more time to chat with you then, why don't you come on in? Being involved professionally is extremely important. So this really prepares you for your interview because you need to be active within your professional organizations, not just have them as a bullet point on your resume and just pay the dues. You need to know specifics about that organization. For example, what webinars you attended. I would have candidates come in, they would say, oh, you know, I'm a member of Shape America, I'm a member of New York State AHPERD, and I'll say, you know, did you attend the conference? Yes, I did. Oh, what did you attend when you attended the conference? Couldn't name me one thing that they attended, or one webinar, or one Suffolk zone, Nassau zone, Capital Zone meeting that they went to. You need to be an active participant in those professional organizations. Always dress professionally. That is huge. Learning those school demographics and mission statements also through those district websites are equally as important. I want to just go back, you know, all these little synapses keep firing. When Bob had mentioned before about the cover letter, when you write your cover letter that accompanies your resume, make sure you don't just change the name of the school district and who your title, because sometimes you forget one, or you screw up the pronoun usage, you use he and she and they, and you know, don't just like wing them off. Make those cover letters personal to that school district. Don't just copy paste, stick in the name of the school, stick in the name of the superintendent, because you're gonna screw it up and you may screw up getting a job as a result of that. So that too is equally important. Before the interview, Donn had mentioned, be prepared to ask questions. That was my favorite questions. At the end of the interview, so what question do you have for us? And usually it's dead silence. I don't really have any questions. So be prepared with specific questions tailored toward that school district and that position.
Very good. Now, we've talked a little bit about verbal communications, and we're moving into the section of nonverbal communications when you're going to the interview. So I'll get into that in a second. And I just want to back up a little bit about that cover letter. And thank you, Lori, for that. Appreciate that. Your cover letter should be simple. As Lori says, the first paragraph should talk about where you found about and what, and all those directions that they gave you. That first paragraph is that. Your second and third is a little bullet point, just enough teaser about you. The last paragraph is, I look forward to sharing my qualifications with you. And that's it. Your cover letter should be simple, because keep in mind, there's many cover letters out there. Nonverbal, we talked about, we're all kind of talking about this at the point. When they say make an effective entrance, you're going to be led into a room with a group of people, 5 people, 7 people, 12 people. I've had as many as 25 people I've interviewed in front of. Each district has its own set number of people. And usually an administrator, you're going to have all the constituents, from the parents to this, to that, to everybody involved with it when you do that. So you make an effective entrance. This person will either lead you or be behind you, but you want to create some space. You want to walk in slow, and you want to take the room into account. You want to look through the room, you're smiling, you're walking tall, you're taking the whole room in. And it's important to watch the person that's escorting you into the room. You don't want to sit before they do. Why? Because you want to show that you're in power for that position. It gets to a point where you'll feel awkward. When you feel awkward, that's when you'll sit. But you want to make sure that person walking in sits first, and then you sit there. You want the upper hand. So that's why you're walking tall, you're entering with a purpose. You're also going to make contact around the room. You want to look the rooms, whether you're going from left to right or right to left, it doesn't matter, but you're making contact and smiling. And sometimes they'll introduce you to each one of them, and they'll expect the handshake right around the table. Some people won't. They'll put a table in your way and you can't get to them. But certainly you can nod your approval. Pleased to meet you. Nice to be here. The positive stuff. So you're conveying a relaxed energy. Like I'm doing now. I'm using my head and my hands more than I really did. I'm trying to concentrate on that. And we talked about dress. You're communicating with your clothes. We talked about business dress. We talked about being professional. Well, what does that mean? For the guys and for the gals, it doesn't matter. It's the same color. It's a dark colored suit. It's a blue or a gray. Your shirt or your blouse is a white or a light blue. Gentleman's tie is standard business. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nice stripes, nice this, whatever. Your shoes, by all means, make sure your shoes are shined, because somebody in that room is going to look down and say, oh my God, he didn't shine his shoes, or she didn't shine her shoes. But make sure your shoes are shined to the ninth, because everybody's going to look for that. As far as your jewelry and stuff you're wearing, if you're wearing earrings, they're simple hoops. You're going to wear simple. So you're communicating with your clothes. Once again, it's business attire. It's a dark colored suit. It's a white or blue shirt. It's a standard tie, and your jewelry is kept to a minimum. And you notice right now, all of us right now, we've been speaking, we've been modulating our voice up and down and up and down. Make sure you do the same thing when you're interviewing. You modulate your voice accordingly. Thank you.
Great points, Bob. Excellent. So for those of you that can see this screen, I'm going to get to this QR code in a second, but you might want to scan that, because I came up with a list of sample questions to be prepared to answer in an interview. And it's not all of them. It's a whole bunch that I think are very typical to be asked and just to be prepared with. But I want to understand, I want to start off with this, and I just am being realistic. I'm not trying to be negative in any sort of way, shape, or form. Not all interview committees value the same thing. I know of people on interview committees that they feel they're coaches first and teachers second. And even though they may be going up for a teaching position, they might be looking for a coach. And I don't agree with that, but it's realistic. There are some people on there that they could care less about physical education or health education. And then there are people on the committee that want absolute rock stars, and they want to see the best of the best of the best. You have to be prepared as if, A, your job depends on it, because it does. Because if you really want that job, you got to be ready to fight for that job, and you got to be prepared for it the correct way. And so when Lori was mentioning about like the whole lacrosse coach thing, I agree with her. If you're going for a position for a health educator, I want to know all about why I want you for this position. But I also know of administrators who that's what the sort of person that they're looking for too. You can't go in with the mindset of that. You got to go in the mindset of, I want this job and my job depends on it. Number two, you need to prepare as if you are going to get a job in the #1 school district in New York State. This is the place to be, and I want to be part of that group. And you want to be prepared and wish to stand out. Now, I think this is a question, Anthony, that you were possibly hoping for us to answer. Does it give you an edge to be a New York State AHPERD member? In this person's opinion, absolutely. If I was your interviewer, damn right you should be, because it shows that you value our field and you value furthering yourself in our field and you want to be a part of it. But I cannot guarantee you that the people there are New York State AHPERD members. In fact, again, I can think of people on an interview committee for a physical education teacher who were not New York State AHPERD members. I believe you're doing the right thing if you are, and you really have that in. Hence, like this, we're attending this seminar right now, and maybe you would never have known this unless you were a New York State AHPERD member. So good for you if you are. So if you have your phone, quickly scan that QR code. If for some reason it's not working, please let me know, because I think it should work. But if it does, okay, good. So it'll link you to a whole bunch of sample questions. And I don't want to go over every single question, but I just want to highlight a couple. So the interviewer sits you down. They might tell you to tell yourself a little about yourself. But then they say to you, why did you choose to be a physical education teacher? Or they might give you something more specific. They might ask you, how do you assess your students in health education? They might ask you something like, how do you establish a relationship with your colleagues, with the students? How do you get a rapport with these people. Discipline is an interesting one. So I was on an interview once for a staff member, and the person wanted to know how they handle discipline. And they tried to explain to them, we have certain populations that are with other populations. How would you handle this, that, or the other thing? There was an interview that I was on for myself where they wanted to know a negative quality about myself. And I took the tack to answer that at the time of trying to spin it into a positive. So for example, the perseverating, which I know a lot of people do, where you replay scenarios over and over in your head. I tried to highlight that was a negative, but at the same time, I'm learning for a different way I can do something. So I always try to put a negative into a positive. As you go through this list on your own, guys, there is at the bottom, I wrote scenario questions, and it says, be prepared to answer what if questions. And if this should happen, and they ask you a question that maybe throws you for a loop, nobody says that you have to answer that immediately. You can formulate your answer, take a deep breath, think about what you're going to say, and then you can say it. You can even admit, and I don't think this is a negative, to say, wow, that's an amazing question. That's going to be a tough one to answer. Let me think about that for a minute, because it's showing that you really care about giving a good answer instead of just blurting something out and then thinking after the fact, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. I should have really thought about that. And so, please feel free to print these things, use it to base yourself on other questions. This was the sort of thing that I spent for myself. I came up with these scenario questions. What if they ask me about New York State standards? What do they ask me about if I skills test children or not? Or do I give timeouts to children? Like, these were all things that I was hopefully prepared for. It did not always come up. And on interviews I've sat on, they don't always come up. But you really don't know if that's going to happen or not. So take a look at that, add that to your bank of questions, research other things. There's a lot of great people there out on social media that you can get great ideas from, just to be ready. Thank you.
So there's a couple of things as we were going through that I was thinking of. So what questions should you be prepared to ask the hiring committee? What opportunities could be afforded to you if you take this position? For example, coaching, club advising, developing of your own course, and have a course in mind that could enhance that school district's curriculum. Think of where your passions lie within that umbrella of health or physical education. How can you enhance that school district? That's something you should go in prepared to answer. Also, I know I was always the lead health educator at being the chairperson, asking questions. So I was always the one that really kind of sifted out, was this person really in to being a health educator? At Sachem, we had solely health educators, no dual majors. If they were a dual major, they would have to tell us a little bit about why they wanted to lean more into their health education side of their dual major. We would ask them, I would ask them things like, so under the field of health education, what's your favorite topic to teach? And they would say, some people would say, oh, sex ed, or some would say, oh, drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. It was kind of a trick question. It wasn't very nice of me, but sometimes interviewers will ask you trick questions. Health education is a skills-based topic. It's not about today we're going to do drugs, alcohol, tobacco. Tomorrow we're going to do this topic. Okay, we're talking about the skills involved. So you could say something like advocacy. I would develop an advocacy project. That would show me that you have been prepared properly as a health educator. I might ask you to talk about navigating the stars. Although antiquated, it does talk about skills-based health education. And it is okay to say, you know, I don't know. That's a great question. But when I leave here, I'm going to look into that question and then get back to the interviewers. You know what? I was thinking about that question. I didn't have an answer at the time. And I admitted to you I didn't have an answer. But in a follow-up letter, I thought more about it and I researched it a little bit and I'd like to give you my answer. It's okay. It's okay to take time if it didn't go well and reflect upon it and then get back to those interviewers. I also love to ask, think of a time during your student teaching experience where things didn't go well. How did you adjust from period to period? You had, you know, first period, you taught this lesson, you thought it was going to go really well, it didn't go well. Tell me why it didn't go well and how you adjusted second period to make it a better lesson. So these are some of the things you can think about during interview questions that may come out that aren't so traditional.
Many times through many committees and many times through multiple things, I'm always asked, should I have a portfolio ready? And the answer is yes. The reason why you want a portfolio ready to pass around the table is because there's often one person's asking a question and there's dead time around the table. So you want the people to look at you. You want 3 copies of your resume in that portfolio because oftentimes they're going to scribble on one. Can I have a fresh one? I've been asked that more than once. And what do you put in that portfolio? Your letters of commendation. You've done something good for a district. Even when you're student teaching, you got a nice letter from the athletic director. You got a nice letter from the principal. You got a nice letter from the director of health. Whatever. Those are letters of commendation. They go in there. Any awards you might have won. And your certifications. I know you're not there yet with initial. But certainly when you do get there, you want your initial certification in there. You want your certification. You've got to work towards that permanent, of course. And inside that portfolio should be evidence of your accomplishments, not tasks. What did you accomplish? What can you show in there? For example, I was an editor for a newsletter. I put some newsletters in there with my editor's column in there in my portfolio. And you want to prepare an executive brief to go up front, which is essentially going to be your opening statement when we go. And I've got questions on my next slide, but that traditional question that every place, what can you tell us about yourself? That's just a lead in to get you to relax. So you want to prepare an executive brief, kind of like you heard us all give our executive brief about ourselves in the beginning. And you want photographs of your activity. And I think there was I had one great health teacher that I had, and we had mobiles up he had kids do mobiles, and I brought the superintendent in, and fortunately the superintendent came in the classroom and he happened to see what was going on in there, and it was a terrific lesson on health, but it got twisted by the time it got home, and the superintendent said, I was in there. That's not what happened. So the superintendent was able to answer a question that he wasn't seeing. So the photographs are important, and make sure you insert, like we had the QR code before, you want that in there so they can access your portfolio. You want them, and I've had people access portfolios after they've left and they go, oh, wow, I missed that. How did I miss that? Well, your portfolio is an important part of selling yourself to get that job. And my next, when we get to it, I've got some sample questions in there. So next.
Okay, you mentioned sample questions. We got some sample questions.
Right.
So I don't know if it was Bob or Lori, but when somebody had mentioned about an interview and then their silence, you absolutely don't want to do that. You want to be ready to ask the committee or interviewer questions. And in my opinion, do not use your device. I know it's really easy to take notes on your cell. I do it all the time. I don't think that's a smart idea because they don't know if you just got a text from your buddy or not, or whether or not you're reading it. So I would tell you, write it down so that it's on an actual physical piece of paper. And then that way you can do it, or maybe even take notes on it based on what they say. Because, well, it is a two-way street. You want a job, but at the same time, it's got to be a good fit for you. I think that the questions that you ask them, they should be informative. They should be thought-provoking. And I'm not saying this again to be rude, but if you look at the last bullet on the screen, I like doing stump them questions. When you have an administrator say, oh, wow, that's a really good question. Well, it shows not that you're trying to give it to them, but it's showing them that you really are interested. You want to know. You want to know what's going on. So again, this is a different QR code, guys. This is not linked to the first one, but if you scan this one, it should bring you to a document that says sample questions to ask in an interview. And like, I'm going to highlight a couple of these that I think are great questions. Like if I ask an interviewer, what specific qualities are you looking for in a HPE teacher that you want for this position? You can ask about structure. What is the typical day structure like? What are the amount of classes that your teaching staff would teach in over the course of a day? How is curriculum handled for this position? Is there say from a chairperson, do I have an opportunity to expand on an existing curriculum? You could even go as, what do you believe the strengths and weaknesses are of your HPE program right now? Or what are the sort of attributes that you guys believe you would want in a teacher coming into this position? One of the things that I think is pretty important also has to do with how they can support you. How does this district support your HPE staff? Do you allow for professional development? Is there a mentoring system that you do where I can be paired up with a veteran teacher? How do you measure my performance? How are you going to evaluate me when I do that? There's different models of evaluations. The ones that I do in the Mahopac district that I have to deal with is the Danielson model, but there are different models of how they're going to evaluate you. And so I think it's okay, to think, if you think of something along the lines, you might have a follow-up on top to what you written down. But please, 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 I can't stress this enough. Please come prepared with questions to ask your interviewers.
So after the interview, an email thank you is equally as appreciated, but a handwritten thank you note, that's just like class. When I receive something in my mailbox from an interviewee, a handwritten note, that's just, I think that just puts that person above the other. It's just a classy move. It's like when you show up professional in that gray or, navy blue suit, and, you're looking all polished and fine, to send a handwritten note, that's incredible. Always, always, always follow up with the school district. However, when you follow up with the school district, sometimes the wheels of progress move very, very slowly. We may do a first interview, a second interview, a first demo lesson, a second demo lesson. Don't like, hey, Mrs. Hewlett, did you hear anything yet? Hey, Mrs. Hewlett, did you hear anything yet? Sending me email after email after email. That's not going to reflect favorably on your being hired with the school district. A handwritten thank you note, an email thank you, equally as appreciated. And you can follow up with the school district if you had some second thoughts about a question, but don't keep, asking, did you hear anything yet? Did you hear anything yet? So that's all I have to say about that.
Like Donn, he has a QR, but I just wanted to put up front, these are questions to anticipate. I do want to go back to what he said, asking questions at the end. That is so, so important to your interview. Many times when we get to the end of the interview, and Lori had said it earlier, do you have any questions for us? And they go, no. Well, to most of the people around the table, that's, you don't want the job. Thank you for coming, but you don't want the job. If you don't show any interest in us, we're not going to show any interest in you. And I think it's important that you ask questions that can be answered or ask questions they have to think about, like Donn said. He called them stump them. I'd use a different word. a thought-provoking question. I would use more on that one. I think the questions afterwards are so important. Typically what I would do, and if I'm going through an interview, when they said, do you have any questions for us? I would repeat things they'd answered. All right, we talked a little bit about your traditions. Okay, well, I don't need to ask that question. I would repeat some of the stuff that they answered for when I was going through before I got to my question. And I always have a few extra. I said, I have this question for you. So you always want to have a question ready at the end. And I don't know if anybody wants to play with any of these questions right here tonight on around there. We can play a little bit if you guys want to try to answer some of these. Anybody want to play?
What is it like? We're role playing right now. You said you want to role play,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Anybody want to play?
No,
Okay.
you can unmute yourself. I saw you raise your hand.
All right, how's it going?
Good.
Go for it, Nah.
Now you want to play?
Yes.
Oh, very good. I was hoping somebody would play with me tonight. If anyone that you see on the page interests you, you want me to ask, and then you can answer.
What am I doing exactly? Sorry.
You're going to answer one of these questions.
All right. Who's up? Who got the first question?
Who got the first? Who wants to play? Now wants to play? Okay, good. Let's skip the tell about yourself. We know that. Let's go to the second one. What role does formative and summative assessment play in planning and grading?
Well, so formative and summative assessment are very important in any physical education or health education curriculum. This gives us a hard copy way of allowing us to assess our students. So giving our parents, something to look at. So if they ask us, oh, why is my student performing this way? We could say, oh, we have some formative assessment and some summative assessment. So formative assessments are kind of informal most of the times. And that's like to give us a basic understanding of our student. And the summative helps us, collaborate all of the semester into one to see how they really did and to see if they progressed.
Okay, very good. Actually, I gave you the answer right there. If you look at the way the question is written, formative assessment informs planning, summative assessment informs grading. If you kind of look at it.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be tricked, but it was meant to be
Tricky.
to try to give you a hint. Yeah, when I ask a question, I try to give you a hint so you can get an answer. I don't expect you to know all the abouts, which is fine. I really like, okay, who else wants to play? We'll take one more and then I'll move on. Anybody else want to play? I'd rather have you fail here than fail in front of a committee. All right, then I'll just skip. Nobody wants to play. That's all right.
I'll take one.
Who's I? Where are we?
And Junior,
Hi, Junior. How are you?
I'm doing good. Sorry, my
All
camera
right,
was
good.
off. My hair right now is all over the place, man.
That's okay. You're not in the interview. Don't worry about it. I don't want to. I want to see your hair, baby. Come on. I'm going to go because this is a typical one of most schools. How you handle a discipline problem is the one I'm going to do.
Okay.
So we're going to go with that, and then I'm going to go into a scenario. So you start with the first part.
Okay, so how would I handle a discipline problem where there's different types of discipline problems, but let's say there's a student who might keep talking while we're having class discussion, right? So for them, like the first thing I would do is first give a verbal warning, right? Then maybe a second verbal warning. And then after that, I mean, it kind of depends, I think, on the school environment, whether they feel like sending them out is okay or not. That will, I will have to research the school, but maybe like sit them out, but sit them out like with a purpose, just like I'm not sitting you out like because I don't want you to be active or anything like that. It's just, I want you to think about why it is that I'm sitting you out. And then afterwards, like when the teachers are picking up the students or like, you know, just find like a space and time where the students are engaged and just literally go one-to-one and ask what's going on, you know, just try to build rapport with the student. Because sometimes
Okay.
it's like the behavior is not even like they're not trying to like be disrespectful or anything like that, but it's just they, you know, they might have something going on. Maybe something happened during the school day, or maybe something happened at home that's influencing that type of behavior. And sometimes just getting them one-on-one and trying to get to know them and like talking about it, like getting on their level, like sometimes goes a long way because it shows that you care, like you're taking the time. And then, you know, it helps you understand too, like why it is that they might be acting that way as well.
Sometimes when you're handling your discipline problem, it keeps escalating, although you've tried all the stuff, and most of the times you're not going to get to that point, but you're going to get to one point where you're going to have to call the parent. All right. We're going to call the student Jamie. All right. And I'm going to be the parent and you're going to be the teacher. Call me. You can call me Bob on
Jamie,
here.
right? Jamie, right?
Jamie. The student's name is Jamie and I'm the parent, Bob. Call me.
All right. Da-da-da-da, da-da. Hello,
Hello.
how you doing? Hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
And this is Mr. Galez. I'm calling from the Bear Elementary School here at District 25.
Mhm.
I'm one of Jamie's physical education teachers, Mr. Galez, and I'm calling just to give you some information regarding Jamie and his participation and his performance in physical education. Now,
Oh,
first,
stop. My Jamie wouldn't do that.
oh no, no, just first and foremost, I wanted just to let you know that
Oh, there is no first and foremost. I know my Jamie.
oh, well, yeah, like he's a really, really
No,
respectful
he's not.
student.
Let me
Uh,
stop you, okay? You're just
yeah,
digging yourself a hole. It's okay.
okay,
It's
it's
okay.
fine.
I'm a tough play. It's okay.
That's funny.
It's okay. Look, all administrators learn the first thing that when you're calling a parent, because we always have to call parents all the time on behalf of teachers, on behalf of everything. The first thing you do to disarm the parent is you learn the magic words. I need your help. When you say, hello, this is Mr. So-and-so from the school, I need your help. You want to disarm them right away. So the magic words you need to learn is, I need your help. All right. And that's important going a long way because every parent is around their kids most of the day. The school only has it for like 6 hours. So the rest of the day they're home. So they know what their kids are like. They know what a pain in the tuchus they are. They know how much trouble they can get into. They see it around the house. So you don't need to rehash the trouble. So you want to go with a plan. I need your help and then tell them what you need to do. I need your help to impress upon the importance of Jamie towing the line in class. So, and that's how that works. Thank you for playing. I'm good.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So this is just Don's contact information. He also has his Twitter there. I'll give you guys a couple seconds here to write it down. Donn Tobin, of course, his Twitter is at Donn Tobin. And
Yeah,
then
it's
his email.
real original, right?
Then his email is tobin@mahopac.org. Of course, it's where Donn teaches. And then his cell phone number, if you desire to call or text him, I'm assuming that's totally cool with Donn.
Yeah, it's fine.
Awesome. Thank you, Donn.
And I just want to say one thing that I forgot to mention about the earlier when I mentioned the sample questions to ask the administration. And I don't know why I did that. Maybe that's my fault for the font size, but on the second page, I wrote, note, do not ask about salary, benefits, etc., until you are offered a position. I think that's huge. If you're in an initial interview and they ask you for questions, don't ask them, how much does this pay? It was such a turnoff. Wait till they offer you a job, and then it's okay to talk about that sort of thing. But it's been an absolute pleasure being here. And if you guys have questions before we sign off, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. And just to plug Donn a little bit more, he does a couple snippets for professionals on Twitter, of course. Definitely check that out. It's just basic tips and tricks to certain things that you may come across either during student teaching or first year teaching to help you out. And then of course, next we have Lori, her email, HewlettLori@hotmail.com. Of course, same as Don, and probably even Bob. I'm assuming it's perfectly fine if you call or text them. Lori's cell is 631-834-1198.
And please feel free to reach out. I'd also like to personally invite any of you who'd like to come to our Suffolk Zone meetings. We do them right now, Zoom platform. Next year, we're going to do hybrid, so you can join us by Zoom or in person. But please join us for our Suffolk Zone meetings. It's a great way to network with athletic directors who are looking for possible positions. It's also a great way to network with health and physical education professionals. So give us a shot at the Suffolk Zone if you're a Suffolk County resident.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're in the Suffolk Zone, feel free to reach out to Lori to get more involved there on that level. And then we have Bob Zifchock, have his email there, RCZ20. That's an underscore there. You can't see it. So RCZ.
There's an underscore between the Z and the 2.
Underscore 20@yahoo.com.
It's RCZ underscore 20. Yeah.
Yep. Once
And-
again, it's RCZ underscore 20@yahoo.com. Of course, that's Bob.
Just do me a favor when you put in the subject line, either interview, resume, something pertaining to tonight. Because if I don't know who you are, I'm going to delete you.
And Bob's great. I've emailed Bob my resume in the past, and he edits it right there for you. I've never sent him a cover letter, but it will happen in the near future. So if you need an AD with amazing experience to go over your things before you go for that first job interview or any job interview in general, he's a great person to reach out to. And then of course, he's got his phone number there. I'm assuming same with everyone else. Bob's probably fine with call or text. Just keep it formal, of course.
Can I say something, Anthony?
Yes.
I just want to piggyback off of what Lori said about the invite to the Suffolk Zone. So for all of your information, if you go to the New York State AHPERD website, NYSAHPERD, and I'll put that in the chat as well. New York is broken up into 10 different zones all across New York State. And so I'm looking in here at where a lot of you are students, and I'm seeing a lot of upstate, like Cortland would be, and Ithaca would be in Central South. Roberts Wesleyan and Brockport would be in Central West. I saw Manhattanville up there. Looking at Manhattanville, that would be Southeastern zone. New York City has a zone, and all of the contacts for all of the presidents of those zones are in this website. So if you're interested in getting more involved, you have a choice. You could either get involved with the zone where you're at school, or you could get involved with the zone where you live. So your choice, but just another way you could get involved.
Thank you for that, Mara. And also, if you do go on the website, some zones are looking for future professionals representatives. I myself, Jared, are the representatives for Suffolk. I also do Nassau as well. I know Christian's probably on here. He's the Southeastern zone. I know Nate's probably on here. He's the Central North. And then a lot of them are up for grabs besides the Western zone, which is a Canisius College student. So if you're in that area, living there, or you go to school in one of those zones that I did not name, certainly reach out to the president or the future professionals advisor of that zone, and maybe possibly take on a bigger role and have more professionals get to know you. So I'm going to leave this up to Don, Bob, and Lori. We've already touched on a lot of these, but if you feel there are any you want to highlight again, feel free. Otherwise, we can open it up to an open forum of questions. from the participants.
I believe almost every question was touched upon.
I certainly agree. Lori and Bob, anything from you?
Yeah, just one thing. It says, who should you get letters of recommendation from? I picked that. I don't know if we addressed that.
Oh,
tonight.
no, we did not. Yeah.
I don't know if we addressed it. I just noticed that. The person who knows you the best right now, certainly your college professors that know you the best, or a most recent person you've worked with doing your student teaching. Those people are the better ones to get those that know you at your know how you teach, know how to help you. So those are the people you want to get to. For me, for mine personally, it would have been past superintendents or past principals. For Donn or Lori, had been probably a principal or somebody else there. So it's all a little bit different. So you want to make somebody that knows your ability to teach and that can speak about it. Because I've had resumes, I've had letters of recommendation, and from other people, like call them up as, oh, I'm just a bartender. They go, "Eee." So how do you think? I mean, those are real scenarios. And how do you think that one went?
Right. Also, if you're going to use someone as a reference, make sure they know you're using them as a reference. I have gotten phone calls from school districts from previous student teachers whose student teaching experience didn't go very well. And they used my name on their resume. And I had potential employers call me for a recommendation because I was on their resume and I did not recommend them for that position. Make
Right.
sure whoever you put down on your resume as a reference is someone who will advocate for you, and don't have an inflated opinion of yourself saying, well, they loved me. Well, they may not have loved you. So make sure that your references are solid and that they can advocate for you.
Great. Anything else? Otherwise, we can move on.
Moving on.
Something else?
Awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Nancy.
I have a question for the panel. Just to get your opinion on that. So we talked a lot about, learning as much as you can about a district that you're invited to interview. But we all know that some districts, besides finding the overall mission and vision statement of a school district, sometimes the websites for the different departments is very limited. And the most that's posted up there is athletics, which I wouldn't want to get into if I was, interviewing for a health education or physical education position. So what would you recommend in that case? Is like, you're really trying to do your homework, you really want to do well at this interview. So for example, is it appropriate to reach out to somebody in the school, or is that kind of calling them out for not having a good website? What would be, because that's happened. I've seen that happen many times with students who are trying to find out as much as they can. So just maybe your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We all know someone who knows someone who knows someone who teaches in a district. Wherever district you're going to go to, somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. But I would take that information with a grain of salt. I would take that information for only face value to give me an idea of what the district is about. They may be happy with the district. They may be upset with the district. You don't know that. But what you do know is they do know something about the district that you can take at its face value and then try to find out someplace else, whether it's their Twitter feed, whatever feeds they have, whatever social presence they have. And certainly the PTAs have social presence at school districts. There's a lot of different ways that not just the district website. Anybody else?
Also, the individual teachers may have their own websites. You always have on a staff that one rock star who is just incredible with website design and sharing information. So going on each individual school within the district, so there may not be an overarching website for the health education department. So look at all the health teachers, look at all the phys ed teachers. You're going to find one of them in your investigation that has something incredible, and they may be sharing curriculum design and the various courses that are going on within that school district. So just keep digging a little further, it'll be there.
And also the last point is you'd be amazed at what you can find through Google. Honestly, if you need to find the socioeconomic sort of statistics on the community in general, if you're not too familiar with it, if it's within driving distance and you're able to just drive around the town to see how the town is and looking online, see how many schools there are. Maybe the district has 2 middle schools. Maybe there are 2 high schools because it's a huge district. You can find, articles of recent successes by a school. You just Google it and you could see, they held a festival at that school. They hosted a guest speaker. They had a whole symposium of stuff. Just like play around Google and kind of sleuth your way through. You could find lots of information that way.
And thank
No.
you for answering that. I have one other just recommendation for the future professionals on this meeting tonight. Some of you are student teaching now. All of you will be student teaching at some point in, the next semester after, whatever. I'm not sure what years you're in, but eventually you're going to get there. And one really good piece of advice is, if you're comfortable, invite the director of health and PE, invite your principal. They might not come, they might not have time, but ask them to come in and do an observation of you teaching, and have a post-conference with them and really let them give you some constructive criticism from, possibly somebody who's outside the field, like if it was a principal or an assistant principal, or from a director who ultimately, is a person that does, hiring. I see Bob's hand up, so go.
Yeah, Mara, that's a good point, because while I was working, I used to make it a point to go to every student teacher we had. Even if we had somebody observing, I would go observe the observer. And I would go and spend time with the candidate afterwards, after they were student teaching. And at one point, I had one student teacher actually had to counsel out of the field. It was that bad. And I had to have a conversation with the teacher after. I said, why didn't you come to me earlier? Why am I coming down here now? But it's rare. It only happened once, and I don't know how many student teachers we hosted over at Freeport or Nyack or Valley Central or wherever I was at. So that's very, very rare that happens. But I would make it a point to go and observe a lesson just to give them tips.
And not even, well, besides tips, everybody, it's also networking. It's also an automatic demo lesson. Even if there's not an opening, there's somebody in that administrative position that has now watched you. Possibly if you have networked and built a relationship over the 7 weeks that you were in their school, you could ask them to be a reference. You don't know who they know to call somebody else. Directors, Bob will tell you, I'm sure Donn, Lori, all 3 of them have been in that position. They know each other. They'll call up and say, hey, we're looking for, or we just got these 3 resumes. I get those calls all the time. I just got 4 Adelphi students, tell me about them. Should I, shouldn't I, and that's off the cuff, just because we have a professional and a personal relationship. And so you never know when somebody can help you. I'm done.
Awesome. So yeah, before we move on to questions, with that, I definitely want to touch on that. So for Cortland, we had to do 2 weeks of observation hours, and I actually took it upon myself to go to the AD and my host teacher, Charlie Rizzuto in Oyster Bay, and I asked them if I could do a mock interview with them. I was by no means prepared at all, but just to get the experience and have that, feeling of the fear of what it was and how important it will be one day, it was extremely beneficial. And I was lucky that Mr. Rizzuto, he gave me comments on all my answers that he'd written down based on the questions. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to look over a demo lesson, but maybe next time during student teaching, he will. So that's definitely something to think about if you are in the field currently or going into the field soon to do any type of field work. Definitely ask them. It doesn't hurt to try. Nate, you have a question.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nate DePerno. I'm a junior at SUNY Cortland. I just want to quick thank Bob, Lori, and Don. A lot of information I could use for my future and the rest of participants. This is a great session. So I have a few questions. I just lost them real quick.
Oh, you're
I got
all
a few
up now.
questions. Don, if you don't mind, I'm just going to start with you. You brought up taking notes during the interview. I just wanted to clarify you're not opposed to like bringing a notebook or a small journal just to write down some thoughts and questions. Like this could be done at an interview.
Yeah, I feel like as long as the majority of your attention is on the interview as opposed to writing stuff down,
Okay.
I would not have an issue with that. It's you might be coming up with a thought of something that you want to say about yourself later on that you forgot, kind of like what I did, saying I forgot that last bullet point. I wouldn't overemphasize it, but I don't think it's an issue doing it.
Yeah, and then we discussed like at the end of the interview, you should always have questions prepared to the interviewers. Would it be wrong to bring a sheet of paper with those questions already written down if you do have like 5 to 10 questions?
No, I believe I had stated that I think it's a good thing. Just make sure it's on paper.
Yeah,
And
not on your phone, right? Mhm.
Yeah, not on your phone. And yeah, it's okay to have it. I mean, it could be tucked in your pocket or whatever. And they say, do you have any questions? Yes, I do. And then you go and you whip it out and unfold it. So yeah, I think that's fine too.
All right, awesome. I just got one more. Bob, this one's for you. You brought up like taking photos of lessons, whether this be a liability issue or whatnot. So I know you need permission for this. So when getting a job as a physical educator, would you suggest like sending out a permission slip at the beginning of the year that covers you for like pictures and videos throughout the school year?
Most districts have it in their policy that it can be done at the beginning of the year. And there's a waiver, it's according to board policy. You'd have to research out each district's board policy to see where you're at. Every district that I worked in, it was commonplace the first day of the year, know that you're going to have pictures taken and that you can be used to support the area.
Okay.
Yeah, in our school district, you needed to have a signed waiver, which made it very difficult for especially student teachers who were trying to tape their lessons. So they would have to tape their lessons in the back of the room and only show the rear of students' heads because there were many students for safety reasons that didn't get those waivers signed.
For at TPA, right? You had a videotape, which that's out the door now, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you
You
so
lucky
much.
sons of a guns.
Oh boy, are you ever.
All right, we'll have Lauren go next.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a senior at SUNY Brockport. I'm going into student teaching next fall. So I have 2 questions. One is, how many copies of a portfolio should we bring to interviews? I know it was mentioned to have 3 copies of the resume, but how many copies is appropriate for the portfolio?
I always prefer one. I
One.
prefer one.
Just one? Okay.
Just
And then
one,
the
yeah.
other question I had, is it appropriate to send videos of your student teaching to like the AD or whoever's going to be interviewing you before you go into the interview, just so they could see you teaching?
I would equate that to, a lot of you may be student athletes where you pick and choose your very best to be part of your package of your videotape package to coaches. I would not find that useful because myself, so I would not advocate for that.
Neither would I.
And I agree. And you keep in mind, if you make it past round 1 or round 2, they're going to want you to do a demo lesson. So they're going to see you teach.
Okay, thank you so much.
I would also like to mention when you're doing student teaching, there are some pitfalls of student teaching that we haven't discussed, and maybe that could be a topic for another day. But I would strongly urge you not to work on another job while you're doing student teaching. Your student teaching is your job. Now, your school district may tell you, Cortland or Brockport or Adelphi or whomever may say, you're not allowed to work, and you'll be like, just do a couple of hours here and there. No, you need to put in your best effort to student teaching. And don't be afraid during a lesson to say, you know what, I don't know, let me adjust. Don't be so hell-bent on being right. Be hell-bent on growing during student teaching and learning.
Okay, thank you so
Next
much.
Next we'll have Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm a senior at SUNY Cortland. And Bob, my question is for you. Earlier, you talked about like giving the interview panel your portfolio. And here at SUNY Cortland, we made our portfolio online. So how would we do that? Would we just give each interviewer a link?
Can you have a QR code piece of paper that you could pass around?
Yes.
That would link up to your portfolio? Because
Yep.
people will have their cell phones with them. People may want to access that while you're talking. I mean, if it, so, and I know people have accessed it that way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we'll have Na.
Hey.
Hi, I'm back. So this question's for Lori, Bob, or Don. It doesn't matter. So on your resume, on our resumes, I guess, how many references do you guys recommend that we should have? Is it 3, 4, 3?
3.
Yeah. I would agree.
3. It's like,
Simple
would you,
question. I like that question.
us
Thanks,
for
Don.
would you kill us for 4?
What's that?
Would you kill us if we had 4 on it?
No, not at all.
I'd only call the first 3.
That's all I ever do.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I had 3 on my resume, and then I was told by somebody to put 4, 4. So I was just wondering what people's opinions were. Also, the other question, let's say I go on an interview and the panelists or the interviewees don't say, oh, the course of timeline. So is it safe for me to ask at the end, what is the course of timeline that I'm looking at? Like, as far as like the job process, or how long it's going to take for me to find out?
What I would ask, and I would phrase it just differently. What I would ask, I said, what are the next steps?
Okay.
Now that it's an open-ended question that allows the administrators, may not, whether it's going to be moving on or not, but I just said, what are the next steps with this process? And oftentimes they'll explain in the very beginning what the steps are. And sometimes you may miss that, and that's okay to ask that question again. That's how I would answer that.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I want to go back to one of your statement, you talked about the references. Because you are newbies, so to speak, or neophytes or beginners or getting into the field, I would recommend that you have your 3 resumes, your 3 references on the end of your resume. Someone like myself or someone that's been in the business a while and I'm interviewing elsewhere, I would put on, I think, references available on request, which means in my pocket, I would have the listing of the references just to pull out. But for me, that's wasted space on mine. So I would only put a single line, but yours is because you're new to the profession. You want those references right up front. And
Agreed.
those of us that are in the field, we will recognize most of those names.
Yep.
We know who they are.
Okay, thank you.
Zaire.
I think,
I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, sir.
No, you're good. It's there. First name's Jerry. My question is this. I've been in the business 22 years of teaching, and I'm going to move hopefully towards Poughkeepsie area. There are interviews now going where they are doing them online. So what kind of tips and hints can you give? Because they'll do that initial, see who you are, what you're about online before they actually pull you into an interview process with 5, 6, 7 people. So what tips can you give us for that online first computer meeting?
The first thing I see, I'm looking in your background, Jer.
Yeah.
See what's behind you?
I do.
I'm
That's
looking,
my
it's
daughter
behind you.
painted that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just looking what's behind you. Behind me, you're looking at, these are all awards and stuff we won. And those softballs behind me are for my wife for working national softball tournaments. That's every tournament she worked in national softball. So that's all our stuff behind me. And I'm just be cognizant of what's behind you. And
Okay.
also, it's still the same thing. You still want to be coat, tie. You want to be right up front with that and communicate more with your head. And if you can throw a hand up there now and then so they can see your hand. I don't know whether they're going to have you on speaker view or just a group view like this. I don't know. Others?
Yeah, I want to add something. So right now I'm looking at my computer screen at your face, and now I'm looking at the actual lens. And my advice would be, when you're asking the question, I can look at you here, but when I'm responding, I'm looking here. So it looks like I'm looking right
Oh,
at you.
nice.
So that was it. And then to piggyback on the background thing, this is kind of a funny story, but for when I was up for national through Shape America, I was told that there was a previous candidate that I guess they had stuff going on in their house. So they were in their attic and they had like a clothesline of drying clothes behind them. And this is like a business interview. And I would strongly suggest don't do that. But it's kind of funny now, but when you're up for a job, it's, you know, I don't think anyone's going to flat out tell you that. So just be aware. So
No.
good point, Bob.
Yeah.
So before
Sure,
we move
Don.
on
Now
to the-
everybody's looking at the clothes behind you, Don. I'm in a closet.
I can
Everybody's
see
in my
that, Lori.
closet.
I wanted to say something
before we
earlier.
move on to the next question, if some people need to head out, it is 8:30. Don, Lori, and Bob, obviously, thank you. If you can stay on, that would probably be
I will stay
appreciated.
on.
If you do need to log off, though, just a reminder, this session will be recorded, and any questions that will be answered later, you can see the responses at a later date. So if you need to log off, feel free to. If you want to stay on and keep asking questions or just stay in the chat, feel free to.
I'm here as
Next,
long
we'll
as you're
have
like.
Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Velati, freshman at SUNY Cortland. These questions are to whoever would like to answer. So my first question is, how would I go about, say, getting pictures or videos if it's not during student teaching? Say I'm helping out coaching in the summer, or for my school district, they do what they call off-season lift, where athletes, or really whoever wants to go, they can go into the weight room and work with. Right now, they have one of the former student teachers who's actually helping out, almost as if like a trainer in the weight room. So I was wondering how I would go about, or if I even could, you know, take pictures or videos of myself assisting in there, because it's outside student teaching.
Anybody want to answer that, or you want me to answer that? Well, the first thing that, Kyle, the first thing that was said earlier is, like, you're attached to districts, and it's still, you still want to get permission to take anybody's picture, because you just don't know what's out there and how that child is protected. We need to think always to protect the child first. Because, you know, whether they could be, that could be recognizable some way or safe or sure. You want to make sure you get a permission from each one of the parents that are there. And you want to make sure it's in writing. You know, no, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This is Bob, and I'm working. Wait, can I get your permission to take your son's picture? What do you want that for?
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen on the other end of the phone. But you want to just make yourself a simple form. I'd like to use this for my portfolio for teaching purposes, blah, blah, blah. But get it in writing. Protect yourself.
Okay, so I would just have my own sort of permission slip just written up. Should I put anything specifically on it?
You can Google parent permission slips, and you can pick and choose from that stuff. There's plenty of stuff that's out there that you can do that, but I would make sure you have, and make sure the parents signed it, because oftentimes, being a coach many 100 years ago, I had actually had parents sign into a thing when I had the preseason meeting, and I did that for the purposes of getting parent signatures. So I'd get the signature, and a kid come back, you didn't sign this. You signed it, your parent didn't sign it, so don't start with me.
And also, whatever you're videotaping or taking pictures of, you need to watch out for your own liability. Make sure
Right.
that, say you're doing a lifting class, that you have the proper technique and the proper safety measures are being taken place within those pictures, because you may be opening yourself up to some sort of liability or criticism.
Right.
Yes. And say I'm assisting because I'm planning on helping out with at least the football camp at my back at my high school, just to, you know, help out, get a little bit of experience. Would I go through a similar process with that, or should I do something extra, being that it's a camp and it's not necessarily the students just of the school?
If it's on the school grounds, the school has something to do with it. Real
Okay.
simple.
So should I do anything extra or just the same type of sheet?
You want to work with the administration at the district.
Correct.
They'll help you
Okay.
through it. Work with the administration. Let them help you through it. If it's an off-site camp at Goosetown Park, that's a different story.
Mhm.
You want to work with the Goosetown Park people.
Okay. And then my second question was, would it be wrong to ever ask a question during an interview rather than only afterwards? Say something comes up and there's an open spot.
Well, like a
Keep-
clarification question, that's certainly fine, but nothing out of left field, because it shows that you weren't paying attention to the question at hand. Not
Yes, of
something that
course.
just like sparks a little synapse flying.
Right. Well, and I like what Lori had said. That's correct. There's nothing wrong with when you hear a question, and you're kind of stumped and you're really not sure. Just simply, could you repeat that question for me? Give yourself a little bit of space to go back to be able to answer that question. There's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, recommended.
Thank you, Kyle. Chloe, you had a question?
Yeah, mine is actually, well, my first question is for Robert, Bob. So you talked about resumes before, and I've seen it before where they only want 1-page resumes. I've seen it where it's 3. Do you know what the standard practice is right now?
Well, for you being a new teacher, I would recommend 2 pages.
Okay,
I would recommend, like, if I was to pull mine up, mine's only 3 pages long,
right.
but I've got a lot of stuff into 3 pages. I said the one line, but you want to make sure, and that's another time, but it's another time in another format, but there's a simple format for that stuff. You want to start out with your name and address. You want to go down to your college education. You want to go down to your certifications. Then you want to go down to your professional experience. You want to go down to related professional experience. You want to go down to awards. And then you want to get down to your references.
Okay, but you would say it's okay to go over 1 page. That's fine.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Oh, that's absolutely.
Okay.
Well-
Keep in mind, as I said, keep in mind that I've had as many as 600 applicants for a job.
Exactly.
I-
I worked in a very large school district, and we've had hundreds, and I actually would only peruse the first page if it was a multi-page, and I'd know right away whether or not I was moving this person. Edit it. Don't include high school awards, where you went to
No.
high school. Well, I don't need that. I don't care. Okay, I don't mean to be cruel, but
You're not being cruel.
I don't need to know what you did in high school. So,
Well, you're right, Lori. You're right, Lori. But I would download all 600 and I'd grade all 600.
nice.
Yeah, I'm nuts.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
we would go through them all, but
Yep.
you could
Okay,
tell
you
right
took the
away
time to
from the
put it
first.
there. I'm gonna read it.
First page.
And then my next question is for Lori. Lori, I know you've had a lot of experience interviewing health teachers. Did you have one that interview in particular that stood out? And if so, what was it that made them stand out to you?
There was one teacher who stood out to me because she had a sister who was deaf, and I had a brother who was deaf. And she mentioned that in an interview, just as a side note, and we started signing to each other. And I thought, here's an interesting component that this health educator could bring into the classroom that made her stand out, was a little bit different, was into rooftop gardening, and just was delightful. And that particular interview stood out to me because we were signing to each other, and it was just a breath of fresh air. It was something different that she brought into the interview.
Awesome, thanks.
I've got one more thing to add. Question for you all. Do you know what research says about committees making their mind up in an interview? Their mind is made up in the first 5 minutes of an interview.
Agreed.
Everybody's mind is made up the first 5 minutes in an interview. That's how important that first 5 minutes is. And that's what research tells us.
Any other questions? You can also feel free to ask them in the chat as well, if you want it.
Oh, there's 13 chats down there.
Maybe something that was asked earlier. That
I went
wasn't-
through the chats. You guys covered it.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I see. I just went
Most of
through
it
it.
was thanking everybody.
Yeah, I just went through it. It's good.
My student delegates that are still on, of course, thank you for coming. And unless you want to say hello, of course, introduce yourself to Bob and Lori, my delegates. Feel free to unmute, say hello. If not, of course, thank you again for coming. Appreciate you guys. Also, big thing, the 23rd and to the 25th of September, we have our Ken Demas in person. So expect to have that application come out, and you guys are automatically qualified for that by holding that position. And also relay that information to your majors clubs at your school, or just peers in general, that that application is on the way. And we plan to make some decisions and get that submitted before the end of the school year.